The advice I give my freshman self is to get more involved when you first enter college, because I feel like I kind of waited too late.
It wasn't until later in my career that I decided to actually engage in student activities like on campus. I did do some trips, but there's a lot of free opportunities to get to do things, so definitely take advantage of that.
Better manage my time and learn how to ask for help. It's okay to rely on staff and even my own peers to get adjusted to the college life, because it's so different from high school.
To be open-minded, because you don't know what you're going to be expecting.
Don't just stick around with the people that are kind of within your vicinity. I made the mistake of being friends with the only people on my freshman floor, and now I have 2 friends from my freshman floor that I still talk to regularly.
I'd probably tell myself to relax a little, take it really slowly, because I wanted to rush it. I just wanted to get out of there.
She would come back and visit like every other weekend. Don't do that. If you're gonna visit like once a month, maybe twice if you're lucky. Because if you're going back, you're not getting that college experience.
Ooh, another one, dress for success. Oh my gosh. Being late, it just takes away from so much. You have to do your schedule early. You have to, don't wait till last minute, because most likely, even for dumb things like paying a tuition bill, if you go the day it's due, there's gonna be a line out the door.
So my advice to every student that I work with and that I meet is that you kind of owe it to your community and to your people to fight for what's right for them. And that might not be being gung-ho out on a protest, right? That could be sharing something on Facebook or having a conversation with your family, but that really is within all of us to be able to be the amazing change we want to see.
One of the greatest things I heard from my teachers, or one of my professors over there, was that it's not the professor's job to teach you, it's your own job to take what they give you and, understand it and learn it. And he compared it to you can't expect when you want cake, no one's gonna hand you cake. What we're doing is handing you the ingredients and the recipe, and you're gonna have to go and make the cake yourself.
Get a job at some point in college. Get a job, whether it's working at McDonald's or it's just, even if it's something like that. I feel like a lot of people don't take that seriously. They're like, oh, I'm not gonna work at McDonald's. I learned, I think, some of the biggest things that have made me a better employee in McDonald's. That was the one place that taught me to be on time and to handle what comes at me, the people's attitudes. There's so many different people, and sometimes you have to learn how to adapt to other people's personalities. And that was the one place where I really learned that.
After I didn't get into my first choice school, I was like, so I can basically do anything right now. And mentally I thought, at this age, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have any responsibilities, I could just get up and leave whenever I want. So I was like, what's the coolest place I can think of? And I was like, Hawaii sounds pretty cool.
I graduated from Amboy High School in 2014. I took a year off, and then I started Middlesex in the fall of 2015. Yeah, fall of 2015. And I am transferring to King University in the fall of 2018.
I remember that I walked into Bouchard's office, classroom, and he was like, I'd be really disappointed if you didn't go. And I was like, you'd be disappointed in me? And I remember that I really had to evaluate where I wanted to be. And that same day, it was 2 days before the honors program application was done, I ran to the post office after school, submitted my paperwork, and I was really fortunate to be able to be in the program with great people.
At first, I was undecided during the summer beforehand, and then I was like, I'm spending $40,000 to be here. If I'm gonna take some classes, I'm gonna take it for something. So I changed it to environmental science, and so then freshman year I went in as environmental science, and then I took a geology class, which is the study of rocks. It's not that interesting. And then I took a geography class, also not interesting, and I didn't do so great. So I was like, this is not for me. So then I went on a hunt for a new major, wanted something that was gonna make me money, thought I could do. So then I went to information systems, which is kind of a variation of computer science. Computer science was not for me, it was too hard. So I had to leave that alone too. So I was like, okay, we're rolling up on sophomore year, what am I gonna do? So I went on the hunt again, and then towards the end, I found this program that was called radio and TV, and I was like, ooh, that sounds like something I wanna do. So then I was going to, apply for that major, but I ended up transferring schools because it was too expensive for me to be there, so I came back home. Ended up at Rowan because it was the only other school outside of Rutgers in New Jersey that had a radio, TV, film program at the time. So I was like, okay, my best friend goes there, like I'll have, you know, a comfort zone a little bit, so I'll take the radio, TV, film major there, and that's how I ended up in radio, TV, film.
I was international studies. I finished my first year of college, international studies. I took all the intro courses, took some of the different classes that were required of me, and it was fun, it was interesting, it was something I liked doing in high school, but I just couldn't picture myself being passionate about it for the rest of my life. And just the way my parents wanted me to experience college and just go through life, they wanted me to enjoy what I was doing, not necessarily for the money or anything like that. So it was more about enjoying myself and making sure I'm doing something that I'm going to love doing for the rest of my life.
My first initial plan, go to Kutztown, be a four-year starter on football. That didn't necessarily happen. Grades kind of mess with that. Partying messed with that a lot.
I really just want to say that you're not failing by going to community college. If anything, you're actually making a smart move. You're saving a lot of money. And sometimes you meet some of your best friends along the way, right? You know, I was fortunate enough to leave high school with my best friend, go to community college with my best friend, and you know, I think that, you know, we have this idea that, oh, everyone wants to get into Harvard. And everyone wants to get into Princeton and all these great schools, and that's amazing. And yes, if you believe it, you can achieve it. But going to community college is not selling yourself short. It's allowing yourself to be able to be in a community that's very similar to where you are, right? Middlesex County, you know, love it, has great greenery. I think it's a great place to start, and then you can move on to any place in the world. But you saved yourself so much money. You were close to home, and a lot of the times, at least for me, those are really important.
Community college, you may think that it's a community college. People go here because they don't have this, they're not good enough to go to like a four-year school. That's not true at all. Because the people I've met at Brookdale, they have a lot of experience in the field of what maybe you want to do or what they've done. Because, for example, my typography teacher, he's worked with NASA, he's worked with Budweiser, he has his own company. Like, he's done a lot in his life. He has works hanging in like galleries all over the world. And I didn't know that until after the class was over and he told me.
Perth Amboy is not, it's not what the rest of the world is like, definitely. If you're growing up in Perth Amboy, I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. So it's pretty much 90% of the town, or 95% of the town.
Washington, D.C., it's so different than New Jersey and Perth Amboy. I was here. Ms. Kaboy, you say that I'm not the minority, but in GW I am, and that's not something that I was fully able to accept until I was comfortable enough with my own self.
You definitely stick out, and it's an awkward feeling knowing that you're sticking out so hard, because like whether it's because you're loud or like you have really big hair or like you dress different, like there's these things that we do coming from like either Perth Amboy or New Jersey or even like the East Coast, that if you decided to move away from there, and you don't even have to go as far as Hawaii, but if you move away from like this one area, just the way you hold yourself, people are going to notice how different you are. And
most schools are going to be diverse. Some schools are going to be PWIs, predominantly white institutions. You're definitely going to feel like a minority for the first time when you go to college. And it could be a culture shock, could be something you're not going to care about, could be the end of the world. Just prepare yourself for when you go to college, you're not going to necessarily be around people that look like you or have the same life experiences as you.
in Hawaii itself, it's very much like influenced by Japanese, Vietnamese, and Filipino culture. So just not being able to like buy something at the store is insane. Like there's one store in the entirety of the island where I can buy like plantains at, and it costs like $16 to buy like 3 of them. So it's like, you know, like just certain things that will just make you realize that you're not home.
I would come home to an empty dorm, you know, to no food in my dorm. And that's something that I would miss, you know? And I remember crying every day to my brother, and I told him, I'm like, I can't do this. I really can't do this. I want to transfer. I'll go to anywhere, just I can't be in DC no more. It doesn't feel like home, and it's just too big. And my brother, I remember my brother telling me, he's like, you have to learn how to live on your own care. You have to learn how to move on.
The hardest thing is just like, you know, letting go like after living with your parents your whole life?
A positive of freshman year was that I was on my own, and the negative was that I was on my own.
And it's different speaking to them on the phone. And I remember the first few months, the first few weeks actually, I wouldn't call home because just hearing their voice would make me cry.
As soon as I closed the door when my mom dropped me off, I was like, all right, what do I do now? Like, I've unpacked all my clothes. I have nobody to tell me what to do. I didn't really have any guidance. It was just my friends and I, and it was like, okay, I have to get up and go to class. I have to do everything on my own. I don't have anyone telling me what to do.
One of the things that I did that I overcame all the hardships would be joining organizations and then creating organizations. My brother's a DACA student, so I felt the need to take initiative when President Trump rescinded DACA, because I was living in the heart of American government and politics, so I felt the need to take initiative.
I really do want to push the fact that you really should join organizations, clubs, whatever it may be when you go to college, because that's where, you know, you meet your lifelong friends. Most of the time you don't really meet them in class. You meet them in whatever organization you end up being a part of.
First step is breaking out of like the mold that like you're only from Perth Amboy and you're only this and you're only that. I think understanding that you're not just a member of Perth Amboy, but you're a member of like the world, you know, like you're a global citizen. I think that's the first step.
I started looking out for things that I enjoyed. So I started out with music at first, so I joined the big band. Then I looked into other clubs. I joined fencing, I did volleyball, and then I found the physics and math club, and then I became the president.
I feel like me joining a Latin fraternity, especially since my brother-in-law and my sister were part of kind of like the same organization, that kind of made me feel at home, and it's kind of like a home away from home. So, you know, I love being involved with them and the things that they have to offer.
Just being able, I think finding something that you enjoyed a lot in high school, or like something that you feel like defined a lot of what you did or took a lot of your time, and finding that in your university helps a lot with adjustment. It helps a lot with solidifying who you are in that university.
I did marching band in Perth Amboy High School, so I really wanted to continue that, and another reason I chose Towson was because they had a marching band, so I was like, okay. So I went to Towson, had a marching band, did their marching band and their pep band, which pays for, you know, their basketball games and stuff.
Me personally, I was fortunate enough to find other people that were from this area, so like I had friends from, you know, DC or from Rhode Island, like of course not extremely close, but like very similar. And I was also able to like befriend like the small amount of like, you know, people of color that there were. Like I was able to befriend them, and like we were able to like, you know, share the same sort of struggles.
Dive headfirst into it. Get lost. Don't know where you're going. Just go where the wind takes you for the first week and a half, 2 weeks. Talk to anybody, because 9 times out of 10 they're willing to talk to you as long as you say something to them, because people are going to talk back. They're not brick walls. They have minds of their own and how stuff works.
I think that was the turning point where like I found people that I connected with, and then I started really embracing Montclair and, you know, that whole carpe diem thing.
I personally love my school. I love the feeling. It's like very quiet. It's like no one bothers each other. Like it's like you can do your own thing. But some students, they can find problems with a lot of things, and that depends on how you are. And it's like you can hate the dorm room and I can absolutely love it, but it all depends on you. So it's like it's what you make out of it.
I dormed my freshman year, and then I started to commute sophomore, but I went back to dorming junior year and I commuted senior.
So I did a little bit of everything. So my first year, I dormed at school. I had 2 roommates, which was a little strange. I'm not used to sharing my common space with people. But I think it helped me a lot because I am shy. So living with 2 other people like made me have other friends. Like I was going out with them more.
Growing up, I never had a roommate. I have siblings, but I never had to share my room with anyone unless I was like sleeping over my dad's house, you know, visiting. And maybe I had to share a bunk bed with my brother. But going into college, it was completely different to me because I was like, all right, now I have to share all my space. Like I have to share, you know, this is my air, and now I have to share it with someone else.
Well, I went into freshman year, I wanted to dorm because I wanted to move away from home. But then I hated dorming. NJIT is a small school with boys. 90% of them are boys. So I didn't have a roommate. So it It was lonely, like being alone in your room.
I was really fortunate with my roommate because he was someone like me. He was like, it was never awkward. We had classes our first semester, so he was also a student of music.
But then sophomore year, I met a few friends, and junior year, I decided to dorm again.
He's a cool guy. He didn't talk much. He played video games like 24/7. I think I kind of picked up on that because I started playing video games a lot more. He was a good guy. He's very smart, great in math. But roommates, they vary. They differ from person to person.
We had our desks. We would try to do homework together. We would set up, like, we would go to the cafe sometimes together. And we also had 1 or 2 classes together as well, which we set up while we were in EOF. Our living situation was good because we had a quad. So we had AC, and there was only 4 of us, whereas like some of the dormitories, you have to share with an entire hallway. So we had our own personal bathroom, and not a lot of the freshmen got that on campus. So that was definitely good.
To have a successful living situation, you can't be a neat freak and you can't be filthy. Like, you have to have a balance, because if you're a clean freak, the other roommate is gonna try to, like, I guess, use that against you to always keep the room clean and think they don't have to do as much. And then if you're a complete slob, your room is gonna be filthy and no one's gonna wanna come in and your room is gonna stink.
I set myself up, like, freshman and sophomore year, I'm a very clean person and I don't like for there to be a mess. That's another thing that I'd probably give advice on. Like, trying to maintain, like, if you're a dirty person, like, fix it before you get to college.
And then my sophomore year, I decided that I did want my own room. I really didn't like not having my private area. So me and 4 other girls got a house off campus. I think by far that was my favorite year at Monmouth.
The whole point of college, you want to meet new people. So be open. In any relationship, you want to try to have communication. So if you want this person, you know, you expect that you go into college and these are going to be your lifelong friends now. So just keep that open communication so that you understand each other's boundaries. Like, hey, this food, you can't touch this, this is mine. Versus this is the communal food, you know, or we'll share. One of the hardest things, even after freshman year, when you move into like your own housing, that's one of the tougher things. Like, are we doing groceries together? Are we doing groceries separately?
And then my junior and senior year, I commuted. My mom moved to Florida, so I kind of had to commute to school.
When I was dorming, I wasn't able to have a job. Commuting, you're able to manage your time better, have a job.
A big thing for me moving off campus was it was a lot cheaper than living at school. I think it cut down the cost by like 1/3 of what I was paying to live at Monmouth. And then afterwards, I decided to commute because I was only going to class like 3 times a week, so I really didn't have to live over there. And it came out cheaper to just drive than to actually live on campus or off campus.
And even though GW has fixed tuition, housing is not fixed. I went from paying $8,000 for housing to almost 16 grand for my sophomore year. And it's just gonna go up after that. So parents should be fully aware of the fact that they might not necessarily be paying the same price after their freshman year for their students. And that's something that I had no idea about. I remember talking to you, Ms. Amboy, and Mr. Ferraccio about just the hardship that it was going to be on my family to go to GW and to pay X amount of dollars for my freshman year. And now housing is going to go up by like 50% for me. So just that, having to be open to taking out more loans.
I thought during my college years that I'd be raising money and like saving all this money to go, you know, to places where I was stuck helping my parents paying for school because I knew they couldn't do it all by themselves.
You know, the truth is that it was really hard for me. You know, during the time that I was graduating from high school, you know, my junior year, we still had not one in-state tuition, which means that at that point I was paying 3 times the rate as a documented person because I am undocumented. So I really thought for a long time that all of my opportunities were closing in on me, and it was a really tough time. I was really filled with depression, a lot of anxiety. But I was really fortunate to have people along the way who really cared about me and who believed in my vision and my ideas and just who I was as a person.
I worked in retail for three almost 4 years. And I sacrificed the weekends for so many years where I could spend with my family, because most of the week I was going to school, so I had to take advantage of the hours on the weekend to work and make money. So, you know, there were holidays that I'd be working, Mother's Day, Father's Days, that I had to work, because if they were giving me the hours, then I had to do it.
My parents taught me from an early age that America's the land of opportunities, but it's up to an individual to go out and seek out those opportunities. And senior year rolled around, and I would always remember that saying in my head, that what my parents would tell me. And I remember the fact that I remember my brother telling me, if I want to go to a good school, you better figure out a way to pay for that, Karen.
If there's a scholarship and you can go under it, you write 100 essays, 100 different essays for scholarship. It's like, it takes, if you really like focus on it, it takes one day for every scholarship. And if you do one every single day, you'll have a whole bunch of scholarships that you'll be under.
It was really because of the teachers here in Perth Amboy High School that I was able to go, and you know, it was because of students before me who had gone to the program and were like, hey, this is an opportunity, that I showed up at an honors program in Essex County that paid for my 2 years.
Oh, and always looking into financial aid. Parents really need to get on that. Like, always, like, push your students to go for those first year scholarships. Those are really big. And financial aid, just look at those letters. Like, you never really know. Always apply for FAFSA, even if you think you're not going to get it. I feel like that's always like on the side. People don't really talk about like the financial issues that goes into college, but it's super important.
Well, it all starts with your guidance counselors in high school who help you with everything. And then, I mean, once you go to college, then you go through kind of like the financial aid department in college, and you know, you can sit down and have meetings with them. They have brochures, and on those brochures, it'll show different types of financial aid that you can apply for if you are struggling. And I won't lie, I did struggle a little bit, even though I joined the military, and they were supposed to pay for my school at first, but then I chose Monmouth, which is a private school, and the military doesn't pay for private schools. They only pay for public schools because public schools are government funded.
I went to my financial aid office at least once a semester. There was always something going on with either my FAFSA, like my scholarships or whatever. So it's important to like check your emails. They'll email you multiple times a week telling you like, oh, FAFSA's open, like fill out your FAFSA deadline's this day. Like, just make sure you're on top of it. If you need help, like, there's a whole bunch of people in that office there to help you.
Financially, being an RA covers room and board, just room actually. And TCNJ, they don't pay for your meal plan, but they give you a stipend that you can use towards paying your meal plan, and it covers the second most expensive meal plan. So if you wanted to go that route, you would have your room and board covered. So in total, I think I saved about almost $30,000 in 4 years, or in 3 years of being an RA.
I started becoming more financially independent. Like, I've been paying for college for the last 3 years, and it kind of made me realize, like, okay, money is an issue, but it's not that big of an issue. Like, once you apply for your FAFSA, sometimes they give you money, sometimes they don't, and you have to find your reasons why they're not giving it to you. Start calling people. I think all those websites that have those links, like, if you have any questions, go here, click them. There's a reason why they're there.
My freshman year, I went to Kutztown University in Pennsylvania, so I was out of state. A drastic change from little old Amboy. So yeah, you get on campus, you're like, yo, this is crazy, it's different. It's not what you expect, it's something completely new.
I started EOF the day after graduation. So I went quickly into school, and then, you know, I had the weekends I would be home. So that was a big shock for me, because I wasn't home all week, and then I would get to go home.
I was really excited to move out, but then after moving out, I was like, oh my God, like, I miss my mom. It was a big change. I think I took it harder than her. I definitely got homesick my freshman year and like the first semester, but then the spring semester, like, I started to come out of my shell more. Like, it wasn't as hard, but I was still coming home like every other weekend. Like, everybody's so excited to leave home until you actually leave home and you're like, oh my God, like, I gotta do a lot of things for myself.
It was a little, like, it was weird and not weird. For most people, it probably will be a little bit tougher because they don't have family in that state. But I had family in that state, so I had my grandma, my aunts, my sister. So I did have people that were there for me and could help me if I needed it. But at the same time, obviously, my main source is my mom, and she wasn't there. So it was a little bit hard. You get homesick, you want to come home. I didn't have my car with me my freshman year, so I couldn't just drive home. It was you have to get on the bus, you have to get on the train, someone has to take you there. So it's a little rough.
I know that my mom cried every day. My sisters, I don't think they cried, but they were pretty upset because I feel like I'm like the glue of the family.
So for me to adjust, I was coming back home a lot, like every weekend, and then eventually, I decided I need to stay at school, I need to let myself get used to being away from home, and I would just call her, text her, and I think the biggest thing was being away from my little brother.
They see me, they look up to me, and I've realized that as the years have gone on and as I have gone through college, that they definitely look up to me, and it's hard when I'm not always around to try to give them advice or try to lend an ear, because as a growing adult, you don't always have time, and you don't realize how much time you have, but how little time you have.
So one of my roommates actually, she also came from Perth, Amboy, so we already had a close relationship. So I guess we were both going through the same thing. So we would kind of just try to go out. We would not try to be in the room locked up in there. We would try to do the activities on campus. There's so much going on campus that it's kind of hard for you to isolate yourself. So it's easier to find distractions, and I think having two roommates definitely helped me become distracted and take away the homesickness.
Okay, so the first hurdle off the bat, I went there to play football, and I went there on a scholarship for football as well as academics. My first hurdle that I noticed was more so the education and balancing the sports, because I was so head over heels for sports that I wanted to go far in sports that I didn't focus on the school aspect, and without school you're not going to get anywhere. Simple as that.
You're in charge of your life now, kind of, because they're not with you. So yeah, they have a little bit of a hold, but in the moment, you're the one that's making the final decision of what's going to happen. So you make that decision if you want to go out or not instead of studying, or if you want to go do something else instead of what you're supposed to do. So you kind of have to, you have to make the right decisions, and you have to do what you think is best for you at that moment. And it might not always be right, but I mean, you live and learn.
I didn't think I was really ready for college going into it, just being really, really independent and doing things for yourself. I wasn't necessarily prepared for that. So luckily I had a lot of friends. I had a good support system, just people coming with me to college, and I made friends pretty easily.
You're always gonna have friends, and you're gonna have really, really good teachers that are just gonna be looking out for you when you don't even expect them to be looking out for you. And it's especially for my school, we have a really good music department, and it's the people that coordinate, you're specific. I'm under the brass students. I have an amazing director over there.
My advisors too, in terms of classes, they'd guide me what I should take next, just to get it out of the way, things like that. I was always in their office, especially at the beginning of the semester, or when you go make your schedule. They are great help, always. If you have any questions about classes, credits, anything, that's who you should be going to, and you should become familiar with them.
I was struggling in economics, and I think that's something that incoming freshmen should know, that it's okay to struggle in college classes because it's so different than high school. Here I was one of I had A's and B's, and then in college it's a struggle to even maintain a C sometimes in certain classes, especially your general eds economics, calc, astronomy, your science requirements. That's very hard. So when I meant by asking for it's okay to ask for help, I meant it's okay to ask for help and go out to those professor office hours, because no one's gonna know that you're struggling. No one's gonna know that you need help. So I went to my economics professor, and we just formed this great bond. And then she told me that her husband was looking for a personal assistant, and he works at the Department of Justice. So I was able to be his personal assistant for my first semester.
And then Georgetown actually has a lot of great opportunities for undocumented students. A lot of the times they'll pay your full ride, and they have, through the years, their students fought for a resource center. So they have a resource center specifically for undocumented students, and they have staff that knows how to work with them.
They also have SIs, which are student instructors. Basically, These students have taken the class previously, and they're there to help you either work on, let's say you don't understand this math method, so they're there and they could help you learn it, practice it, and also give you hints as to what the professor focuses on exams and things like that.
I would definitely reach out more because I didn't really ask for help. I didn't really, you should have open communication with not only your advisors but also the teachers you're taking, because if you don't say anything, when it comes to the end of the semester, they can't really help you. But if you have open communication from the beginning saying, hey, this is my name, this is the class I'm in for you, just in case I need anything, need help, direction, we can then establish a baseline. So then in the future, if you run into a problem or you start struggling, you can always reach out to them and they'll be like, okay, that's so-and-so who reached out to me in the beginning of the semester, I can help them out.
Just make sure that you use the resources. They're there for you. You're paying for them, so you should use them to your advantage. If you feel like your essay needs a little bit of help, go to the writing center. The writing center will help you. They'll go through your draft, they'll fix it, and then they'll also send an email to your professor and say, oh, so-and-so was here. It's giving you goodie points, just in case if you're between a B+ and an A-, the professor's okay, this person took the time to fix their essay, they went to the writing center and they tried.
And I also advise freshmen to seek out help in terms of therapy, because sometimes it feels very refreshing to talk to someone about what you're going through, not necessarily your friends, because they might have struggles, but they can't relate to you. And coming to GW from Perth Amboy, it was a culture shock.
For Montclair, we have what's called health promotion, and it's where students are advocates, and they help students with mental health, sexuality and all those things. And it was finding that ended up helping me connect with the staff. It was really weird. I got this confidence, to go around campus and just talk to people. Then I started talking to the faculty in my department, and I realized I have an outstanding department. They were so helpful and so welcoming. I never felt that I needed to hide away from them. It was just, I could just go up to them and talk to them like they were my friends, and that was amazing. It made my experience a lot better for the last years that I was there.
And stress-wise, schools also have psychological departments, I guess you would call them. You could go and talk to somebody. During finals week, they have these stressor weeks, which basically they hold a whole bunch of activities for students to de-stress, to take a moment and step away from their studies and have a good time. Because at the end of the day, if you're stressing all the time, you're not gonna perform as well. So it's important to take a step back and relax yourself.
EOP is, most people call it EOF, but NJIT calls it EOP, which is the Educational Opportunity Program. They usually help first generations or minority students with low-income family.
With that, so you have the Pre-College Institute program in the summer before you start. And so I made a lot of friends through that program, but also I had my counselors, and I went through something called success coaching as well. So I made a friend/mentor who also helped to coach, make sure, hey, you're doing your work. So I would spend about an hour, sometimes twice a week, and just getting work done. And then if I didn't want to get work done, just someone to talk to.
Going into EOP before freshman year starts, fall semester, you live on campus that summer. So I was able to meet people, and I wasn't going into NJIT blind because I knew the departments, who to talk to when I needed them.
EOF covers the first 2 years at TCNJ, everything. So people that become RAs, I think it's almost $4,000 back.
We always had check-in meetings, either with our counselor, and we also had EOF general meetings twice in the semester. And they would give us school supplies, so if we were running out of notebooks, we got new notebooks, we got shirts, again with the clothes. And sometimes we got supplies, anything that we needed. They helped with, they helped pay for books. Any books that we may have needed. We could also take out an EOF loan, and we would pay it back at the end of the semester, or as we were able to. And if we did take out a loan, we would write a thank you letter, because often the money comes from EOF alumni.
Middlesex was probably the easiest in terms of finance for me and my family, due to the fact that I don't get much financial aid, much help from the state. Well, from the state now, but not from the government overall. I don't get much. So it was all coming out of my parents' pockets and myself once I started working. So that was probably the easiest for me, even though I started with 5 classes right away, which was a lot. It was the most I've done. But we saw it was easier to start there and then just work my way up.
Academically, first semester, like, did pretty okay. Like, I had 2 C's, and I was like, well, that's not, like, it was just out of character for myself, I guess, or out of my expectations.
It gets really easy to get overwhelmed when you look at everything when it's given to you. Like like looking at it vertically instead of horizontally. It's like everything has its own due date. So like if you focus on the things that are due first before everything at once, then that's not gonna help.
Every night after I'd get off work at like 10, 11 o'clock. I'd go into our common area, like a studying area, and I'd set up my laptop, put on some music, and I'd open my laptop to like the homework we had and just start writing on the whiteboard. And I would cover this whiteboard like 4 times over. Like I'd have to like erase everything, go back, and erase everything, go back. And this was every night without fail. And I still had to like fight for these tests and like this midterms and these finals. And at the end of it, you know, I came out with a B. Like I came out with like an 85 or something like that.
I was always in the writing center because when I had that one professor, I felt like I didn't get where he was coming from, so I needed help, like outside sources to help me. So I would go to them because that semester I remember he wanted like 5 or 6 papers that we had to write. So I would go to them because I was like, I can't fail them because there's only 5 or 6 papers that he was grading, and that was my whole grade for the whole semester. So I was like, if I fail one more, like my grade's just gonna keep going down. So I was going to writing center. The library, that's where I used to get all of my work done. They help you in there all the time. They're open really late, really early. That's where you go to print, that's where you go do everything. In terms of like homework, I found it easier to get it done in the library instead of at home or like somewhere else, just because the way I focus, like I can't have noises around me.
As a biology major, you don't really write a lot of papers, you write lab reports. So thinking about it like, oh yeah, it's just a lab report, but my lab reports were like 30 pages long. And it's not like I had one lab report once a year or whatever. I had multiple. And it's just a lot, but it comes back down to time management. Like I wouldn't sit there and try to do it in one night. I would break it up because if I did it in one night, 1, it wouldn't be my best work. 2, I would just be overwhelmed with stress.
You're gonna learn how to manage your time. It's gonna slap you in the face for a little because, like I said, my first semester I was taking 5 classes. I was part-time then, but I was basically working like 30 to 35 hours a week, and I was in retail. So it was very hard because you had to get your schoolwork done, but you had to make your shifts, and the mall doesn't close till like 10 at night, so I'd be getting home late, doing homework very late at night to wake up and go to my 8 a.m.
I feel like one thing that I encountered in college was, you know, the stress load of the work. But I feel like if you work on your time management and just work on, you know, bettering yourself and being a better student, then that really shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I kind of struggled with that my freshman year, but after freshman year, I kind of built my own time schedule that I followed that allowed me to stay on track with school, and I always got my work done ahead of time because things always do pop up in college, especially if you're involved. So especially being the president of an organization, I had to attend a lot of meetings. I had to go on little leadership retreats here and there that I would have to go for an entire weekend. So that was a weekend that I wasn't working on actual schoolwork, but I was doing things for my organization. So I had to catch up on schoolwork beforehand in order to be on time.
So first off, I want to say like graduating from here, I was 6th in my class. Like my friends know that I was really lazy. Like it was easy for me. Like the schoolwork is easy for me, but going into college and going for the major that I had as biology, like I got smacked in the face with the amount of work and like how I had to manage my time. And I know the first couple of weeks I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like I was like, this is too much. Like I don't even want to do this anymore. But after a while, like I got adjusted. I started to manage my time better and I was on top of my game.
I mean, everyone says it here, like all the teachers say it, but like time management is like 100% the most important thing ever. So I learned time management like between like fall and spring. So like the winter I spent there, like I just rewired myself and just understanding the fact that like, yes, there's a due date for this and like there might be something happening and you might have a couple of days to finish something. Like just skip whatever you think is gonna be fun and do what needs to get done and then continue on to do all the fun stuff.
The main thing that I found hard was adjusting to the school schedule in college, because I'm used to, when I was in high school, I was used to taking classes back to back, 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock whenever we got out. Now it's, you know, all classes are about an hour and 15, hour 20 minutes, and you can have classes anywhere from 8:30 in the morning all the way until 10 o'clock at night.
In order to make your schedule, you're just gonna have to, depending if you're commuting or if you're living on campus, the first year, I'm pretty sure you're gonna be all over the place.
It's not like here in high school where you're here from 8 to 3 and you don't have a gap. But in college, you make your own schedule. If you're not a morning person, you take night classes. For me, I'd like to be in and out. So I would take the earliest classes possible and have the rest of the day to myself. And you could either use that day to be productive, do your schoolwork or do extracurricular activities, or like me, I would work after school.
If you ever have a lecture class, my biggest class is like 70 people, so sometimes a professor will know your name in a class that big, but usually you want to find the smallest class that you can, whichever one's in your schedule, and get as close to that professor as you can. And if that means brown nosing it, you're gonna brown nose it, because at the end of the day, a lot of these professors, they have insane credentials, doctorates, they went to the Ivy Leagues, or they know people in Prague or Hungary or something.
So it's just whatever works for you. Obviously, you go ahead of time, always go ahead of time, don't go last minute to schedule your classes so you get what works best for you, you get what you want to get.
Classes get packed and you have to kind of adjust yourself to taking other classes and with other professors at other times.
So at GWSB, which is George Washington School of Business, they have their own career center. So being in the career center almost every day to seek out those internships and to network with people, it's so important.
I got an internship in DC as a project manager, and I worked in Capitol Hill.
I also worked at the Office of Equity and Diversity. So my boss there, who's extremely awesome, she was the coordinator for the Title IX, and so that was based around issues on sexual violence on campuses and dealing with those types of social issues. And so working closely with that in the Human Resource Office was pretty awesome too.
So one thing about being a School of Business student at GW is that we're supposed to network and go to these networking sessions at least twice a week, and they could be anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours to even 1 hour. But we meet with big banks like Deloitte, we meet with PwC, Ernst & Young, and Bank of America, and we just network and we just get our names known to the banks and to the recruiters, because when you go ahead and apply to these internships and even jobs, it's good to have a backup. It's good to have a connection already there to back you up when it comes to them analyzing your application on whether or not they want you.
It's with Montclair University, and through Montclair they work with different companies, so I don't know, whoever, Target, Walmart, whoever decides to partner with the program, and we help them with their sustainability projects. So however they want to go green, so if they want to reduce their carbon footprint, if they want to stop using water bottles or whatever the case may be, we work with the companies to help implement and come up with ideas to help up their green initiative. And so that's what I'm doing throughout the summer through Montclair.
But when I was in Essex, I had the opportunity to go to a space where 300 undocumented people were at in Kansas City, Missouri, in the middle of nowhere, Kansas City. And I remember that I was sitting in this conference room, and we were sitting, and there was a healer there, and she was burning incense and all these things, and I started crying. And everyone was like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, no idea, right? No idea why I was crying, but I cried. And I remember thinking for the first time that there was other immigrant youth out there who were experiencing the same things as me. And through that, I decided that I was going to get involved with my community. I was going to fundraise. I was going to let our community know their rights. And I had the ability to participate in United We Dream events. And that's when I met my current mentor, who, when he was leaving the position, decided that I would be a good fit for it. So he called me one day and he was like, "Hey, you're interested in a job offer?" And I was like, "I'm working at Panera making $7.25. Yeah, of course." So that's kind of how it started. It was a lot of putting myself out there, and I'm just hoping that good things would come my way. And I was able to meet amazing women. United We Dream is 90% brown, undocumented women led. So I was able to meet a lot of powerful women who've inspired me. And my current manager right now, she saw something in me. She threw me into a campaign and said, "Run it." And I was like, here we go.
Well, I feel like college is a learning experience. So I feel like, your parents should kind of just let you go and just become an adult when you do go to college, because you're not home anymore. So you do have to fend for yourself. Nobody's gonna do your laundry. Nobody's gonna clean up after you.
For the parents, it's usually hard for them for the first couple of weeks, first couple months. It's because it becomes a relationship kind of switches on you because it's like you're leaving them, they're not leaving you.
My parents couldn't cut the umbilical cord. My parents called me every day the first month and a half of school. My mom showed up unannounced the first 2-3 weekends.
Like, I feel like parents really should emphasize, like, learn how to cook, learn how to do your laundry. If you need help, ask for help. I think that was one of the biggest issues I had going off on my own.
College is there to help make your child, I guess, grow as a person, as an adult. If you're there hovering like 24/7, oh, you do this, you do that, you eat, they're not living for themselves.
I mean, my parents really got used to college. They had to pretty quickly. Academically, they knew all my teachers here. They knew very well, had their emails. They could talk to them at any point. They didn't necessarily have that in college, which that was the first time they really weren't used to that. And my mom was like, "What's your teacher's email?" Because I was complaining about one teacher. I was like, "You can't," and I had to tell you can't do that. The teacher's gonna roast me, and they're not even gonna respond. I don't want to. You don't really need to do that. So my parents, they learned pretty quickly like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable in a college setting.
If your child is going away, it's going to be something very new, something different. You know, you're not going to see them as often, but at the end of the day, they're doing something good. You know, they're getting their education. They're going to come home as, I don't know how many times a week or how many times a month, but they'll be back.
My advice to parents: help your kid out. If your kid needs any help or assistance, just be there, especially if your kid's first generation, nobody can really relate to them. Just being a voice of reason and just talking to them, making sure that they feel welcome and comfortable, and if they're going through a hard time, listening to them.
You know, I want to share that not all students are going to be doctors and engineers, and although we have great wishes for them when parents leave their home country to make sure that we're able to pursue ours, not every student is going to be a doctor and engineer. Some people are going to do a lot of different things that help their community. Also understand that sometimes they're going to be up till 5. You know, sometimes all it takes for you to know that someone loves you is a coffee on the table at 6 a.m. I know many nights when I stayed up really late, my mom would make me coffee. And you know, and there is going to be a lot of mental health and trauma that happens through higher education. So sometimes really all it takes is a hug. But being there along the way to support your student is really what's going to be key, because ultimately all they want to do is they want to be happy, and I think that's also what parents want of us. Para los padres que son indocumentados o los padres que solamente hablan español, a veces las decisiones de nuestros hijos no van a ser las que nosotros queremos. No todos van a ser doctores y ingenieros. Algunas personas quieren ayudar a su comunidad y tenemos que tener fe que ellos van a tomar las decisiones correctas en su vida. Y también si sus jóvenes son indocumentados, ellos van a necesitar mucho apoyo emocional, mental, para poder hacer grandes cosas con su vida. Dele un abrazo. Sepa que muchas noches va a estar despierta hasta las 5 de la mañana. Hágale un café con mucho amor, y le aseguro que todo va a estar bien.
Something I'm proud of. I wasn't expecting to do as great as I did academic-wise in college, but I feel like once you do go to college, it's kind of like a self-motivator. I mean, it is your money that you're paying for school, so you're going to want to do as best as you can. So I feel like my academics is one thing that I'm really proud of. Being the president of my organization is something that I'm also proud of, and something that I can put on a resume for future jobs. It shows that I have leadership qualities and responsibility in a leadership role.
I'm most proud of having come from like a really rough spot. Like, I was in a really bad spot freshman year into sophomore year, where I was doing like really poorly in my major. I was first a bio major, so I didn't do so well there. And then I changed into physics. I started taking more math courses, and I realized like, okay, like I can do this. Like, this is something I can handle. And just that change was a really big success for me, and I felt like it really speaks out for my persistence to education. And then becoming a mentor, like that, I think that felt like the biggest accomplishment, because I didn't feel like I could ever with where I was before. But, you know, becoming a mentor, you know, being a student leader at school and having people come up to me and ask me questions like, how can I better my resume? How can I better my, like the way I'm doing in classes? And that felt nice. It felt like an accomplishment right there.
You know, you're gonna go through those times where you're just like talking to yourself and you think you can't do it. But at the end of the day, you know, you have to find the little strength that you have left and just push through, because it's literally, bad times are only temporary. They are gone, you know, they're over. And sometimes it takes longer than others, but at the end of the day, you have to focus on what's right for you, and you have to focus on the big picture. And at least in my part, my big picture is graduating, so.
I'll share it in terms of a story. So on September 5th of last year, when we were all expecting the announcement to rescind DACA, I was sitting in Lafayette Park in front of the White House. And we were there with a hotspot and a laptop. And I remember I saw Jeff Sessions come out, and the first word out of his mouth were, "We're rescinding the DACA program." And I remember that I felt like the weight of the world was crushing in on me, and that I knew that I had to call my mom. And I stepped away and I called my mom, and she was really cheerful, and I was like, oh great, I'm gonna be the bearer of bad news. But as soon as I asked how she was doing, she was crying. And I remember that I automatically broke down, and I told her that I called her because I needed her to tell my siblings that I loved them and that it was gonna be okay. That we were gonna continue to fight for them and that everything was gonna be fine. But I really see that moment as a choice. I could have crumbled, I could have cried, and I could have gone and I could have hid. But I decided that I owed it to myself and to my siblings and to my family who migrated from Mexico 20 plus years ago. You know, when my dad first got here, he experienced the winter of 1995, where they were using dump trucks to get the snow out and pushing it into the bay. And you know, when you come from tropical Mexico, eating stale bread and ramen noodle soup, he really sacrificed a lot for our family, and my mom did, right? So I really grounded myself in them. And I decided that I was going to keep fighting, right? And I think that that really is a story that resonates with me and with a lot of the struggles that all minorities face, right?